hosting this training as a webinar. As you may well all know, Travis is with Network for Good. He is Senior Manager of Network for Good's Capacity Building Program. And we've been working with folks from Network for Good pretty much throughout our 4 years of hosting a Big Give, Fremont Area Big Give Day of Giving. So appreciate all of their wealth of knowledge. We rely on it greatly. So all of that said, I want to mention that in preparation for today's training, we did add some new resources to the Big Give website under toolkits. You'll be able to find under the nonprofit organizations section, you'll be able to find several new resources, all of which have to do with cheer pages. So do be sure to check those out. I think Travis is going to be touching on those today as well, but you'll find there several pieces, one of which provides an overview and some technical information about creating cheer pages, also some FAQs, which we think will be helpful. And then a second piece is our peer-to-peer nonprofit toolkit. That's actually presented by Civicor, our platform provider. Again, a deeper dive into what is involved with hosting peer-to-peer fundraising. And then finally, we have a peer page for fundraising tips for fundraisers. And that is a great resource to pass along to your champions who are going to be ready to help you be successful during the Big Give. So do check those out and let us know if you have other questions or if there's other ideas that we could implement into our support for our nonprofit partners. So with that, I will turn it over to Travis.
Perfect. Thank you very much for getting us underway here. I'm really, as I was saying, I'm just really excited to have this conversation with you all today. I don't know if anybody was scratching their head when they saw sort of the subtitle here, that's you know, as the Giving Day Pros, but that's a big part of how we approach, you know, this workshop and really how we started to approach it in this past year. I have done this with, I don't know, countless foundation partners and for a number of giving days with lots of nonprofit organizations. And over time, I just regularly heard a bunch of great ideas that were coming from the actual community and the people that I were presenting to, but I started to feel almost kind of ridiculous to a degree, like sort of standing up there and acting like the expert. I do have a wealth of knowledge, but a lot of it was actually coming from the people that were participating. So I've been trying to really think differently the way that I approach, this workshop. And, a big part of that is really to look to you all to share some of your past wins in, opportunities that you've seen, maybe some areas where you're actually seeing some challenges, and so we can better understand what some of those may be. So really think of this today as more of a conversation that we're having, with the community. I'm definitely going to be sharing a lot of ideas along the route as well. So, definitely not just wholly reliant upon you. So really heavily use the chat, throughout this conversation. I'll be kind of prompting folks, just around certain ideas in certain areas to share some ideas or share some challenges. But, this is definitely a conversation. So participation is a real big part of this. And I think differently takes on all new meaning today as well. I'm going to try to, pepper that into the conversation too, as we are kind of in some unprecedented times where you're not able to get together with people. And so being more reliant upon, doing things slightly different than what you had in the past, and maybe even presenting opportunities. While I think this may be, what would you like to say? Maybe this won't happen, but things such as, folks that are regularly giving you checks, maybe there's an opportunity now to get them more accustomed to giving online. So really thinking about some of those things where folks were previously very set in their ways, this opens up new opportunities to get folks to think differently about the way they do things. Okay. So, all right. So what we're going to be covering today is reflection, just kind of reflecting on past experiences and past giving days. We're going to go through a playbook. You know, I know that if you do these 9 things that we'll talk through, you will be successful. And that's only because I've seen this playbook ran multiple times. And many of you probably are running it, parts, if not all of this playbook already. Because at the end of the day, the issue a lot of times isn't so much knowing what to do, but the ability to execute in that gap there. And then also just a challenge for everyone. Giving days sometimes are treated like events because they really are events. And so that means just, you know, a one-day type of affair. But I think there's an opportunity to look at the bigger picture.
Okay, let me know if you need help.
And let me just make sure everybody's on YouTube. 1 second.
Yeah.
All right. I'm just making sure we muted everybody as well. Still, part 0 though, trying to take into account what the heck is going on. You know, I would assume most of you don't, you know, normally quarantine yourself with your family and friends if you're with roommates and partners on a regular basis, and you know, just spend weeks on end hanging out with one another. And also, you know, when it comes to what you're doing at work, and for many of you, you may regularly deliver programs in person. You may work with an aging population. You know, there's so many different things that are going on right now that are really challenging your ability to be nimble and respond in a way that still moves the ball forward. And so I would just thought we'd start with, you know, a little mental health check. Yeah, I'm curious, how is everybody doing? You know, throw this in the chat. You know, on a scale of 1 to 10, you know, are you a 10 on I'm losing it to, you know, I think things are going well? Is there anything that you found really interesting that's come about, like, you know, or kind of interesting ways to deliver your programs? You know, I'm just curious, how is everybody feeling right now? And don't be shy. That's great, Craig. You know, as an introvert, I'm loving it. Yeah, it's definitely an opportunity to kind of, for all of the introverts out there, to really shine. This is sort of the moment we've all been waiting for. That's great. That's great too. In fact, like I'm climbing a mountain, and I will be glad to get to the other side. Agreed. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, and Craig, that's a big one too. Concerned about the folks that need our services and can't get them yet. You know, trying to figure out, you know, what to do. And I'm really interested to hear, and I'm sure other folks are in the community, you know, what they're doing to continue to sustain the work that they're doing in the community. In instances where, you know, social distancing or, you know, any other barrier basically that's created by the current time makes it really difficult. That's great. Learning how to be a 3rd grade and kindergarten teacher. I saw a quote in the Skim the other day. It's like a daily publication that's put out, and it's something like, on my, you know, 2nd day as a homeschool teacher, I now think all teachers should make $1 billion. It was a much more cheeky fashion, but just reinforcing what a wonderful job teachers do, and sort of how a lot of parents are kind of meeting that reality. Great. Suzanne, yeah, that's a big part of it too, just sort of, again, learning how to be nimble. And I mean, it's kind of testing, like, it's an amazing stress test, you know, to figure out how you respond during this time. And so another big part that I really wanted to focus on is, you know, I know a lot of folks that we're talking to here at Network for Good, you know, people who are participating in our capacity building programs are really trying to better understand, like, what are we doing? You know, should we be sending out emails to people? Should we still be asking for money? You know, what should be our approach here? You know, we don't want to, people are going through a lot right now, and we don't want to interfere basically with what they're doing. We don't want to make ourselves feel like, you know, we're more important than what's going on in your life. But what I like to reinforce is that, you know, your stories matter and yours still matter. And a big part of what nonprofit stories can do is really release a bunch of natural, what would you like to say, chemicals in people's brains that can actually help release stress, can actually help them, you know, feel better, can help them build a stronger connection with, the causes that you guys are working on. And so just something to think about, and I'll share this and follow up, the different notes on, what these different chemicals are, and, how you can think about how do I create a message, that is actually helping people, feel better about, the situation, so it's actually a breath of fresh air, not just another email or not just another text message or call that's coming into their inbox. And so I just want to make sure to reinforce today that the message that you have to share with people, is really, really important. And if anything, it's even more important now during this times of, high stress and confusion, where people are looking for a little bit of hope, if anything, that it can be better. And so part of this too is really thinking about your message. And so when was it? I believe it's serotonin. So a big part of it is looking at achievements and what we've been able to do. I know that these are crazy times, but we have done so much good together. And sort of that type of narrative and that type of story is a way to release serotonin, which is something that reduces stress in our bodies. And so just something to think about for you all. And again, I'll follow up with this. So if you want to dive into it, if you're not sort of an expert in some of these areas, but something for you to kind of take into consideration as you look to shape some of these narratives around, like, how can I really help people outside of just, asking them for money? It is an opportunity that I would just want to reinforce all of you should be taking. But again, still being considerate, and leading with empathy is really key as well. And so I'm curious here, have you all continued to send out, cultivation messages, or, how have you guys approach communication during this time? Or, have you not just had any time to really think about it because you're trying to figure out how to continue to deliver programs or something like that? How are you all responding to this situation, and how you're communicating with donors and supporters? Are you guys still, have you sent out any messages in the last 2 weeks to supporters, or? All right, we've got a lot of quiet folks here, some of the introverts. Speaking of introverts, Craig, first one out of the gate. I've sent out immediate communication, but we'll wait another several days to communicate more. Don't want to overwhelm. That makes sense. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Suzanne, one of the things that you could think about when you do go out to supporters is, talking about everything that you've accomplished, in the past couple of days to help your clients in this world of need, and, reinforcing that the supporters and the donors are the ones that are still making it possible as well. Phone conversations with our clients, offering phone conferences. Yeah, that's great too. I mean, it's something that you may want to think about doing is, hosting your own Zoom conference with supporters in a group format, and, having a similar type conversation that we're having today, could be a great way to connect with people in uncertain times and provide you with a new, more scalable medium as well. So something to really think about, and, how you can interact with your supporters outside of, maybe hosting major gift conversations through Zoom now as well. Great. Awesome. So let's keep going on here. And so first I want to look back at getting into some more of the giving day, and wanting to better understand maybe some of the things that you all did well, some of the things that maybe were challenges in previous years. I know a big focus of any giving day is really to focus on how to leverage the community. These are really community inspired and driven events. And so your community is the one that you're trying to activate and enable to step in and really support the work that you're doing. We'll talk to a number of ways that you could be doing that, or that you should be doing that. But really looking, so a big emphasis will be on how do we do that. And so first I want to kind of look back to the past and think about, when you look at last year, I think Melissa was saying for the past 4 years when you participated, what were some of the challenges that you all ran into? Was it, getting the board to participate? Was it, finding new donors? Was it cultivating it? Was it we made, way too much money and we didn't know what to do with it? Hopefully it was the latter one. Have you had issues with, say, like getting folks to create cheer pages, or to share the message, or just hitting your fundraising goals in general? So some of the challenges that I have heard, yeah, that's a really good one too. So balancing the giving day goals with the overall fundraising goals for the year, how does it fit into your fundraising calendar? That's another one too. Cheer pages were difficult. I know some of the common challenges I hear, are centered around champion pages or cheer pages. Some of the other ones are just getting the board actively involved. Has everybody been able to getting others to jump on board? Yeah, those are pretty common challenges that folks run into. And so I'm curious, what were some of the wins previously? Have you used it as an opportunity to acquire new donors? Have you been able to get all of your board to make contributions? Where have you really seen this as? Where have you seen the wins in the past year and things that you're looking to do more of this year? Yeah, new donors, community awareness. That's a big part of this opportunity. If you can, get others to jump, if you can engage people, whether it be through cheer pages or other means, it's an opportunity to build awareness for what you're doing. Yeah, that's great. New donors and friends that became donors. And that's a really important part of this. And one of the tips, if you're looking at where do we focus our limited attention on, during and after, it's on those, first-time donors that are coming in through this, and are being brought in by the existing supporter network that you have. Great. So it just sounds like the big wins for some of you has just been able to bring in, folks to bring in new donors, and it has been a big opportunity for you all. And I'm curious, looking in the past, is there anything that you've done that you're now looking to do differently? Like cheer pages, maybe. A couple of ones that I've heard recently. A lot of folks wanted to make the donation process easier for donors. Making sure they're going in and getting their pages set up, making sure they're making a test donation to it, promoting it earlier. Start promoting it to the board now. Even though regardless of what's going on now. So really getting out in front of it. Great, and that's really the best way to do it, Suzanne, is just incremental progress. Yeah, Linda, we have problems with an event during the day drawing people. So, it could be one of these things where you just keep Zoom up during the day now, which may be another way to do it. Even Melissa was mentioning prior to us getting on the call here that, one of the benefits to shifting to this virtual format was that more people could join. And so you're breaking down that barrier. And one of the things we'll talk about is like how to make it easy for folks to participate. And that could be one of them, switching to more of a virtual format, at least offering a virtual format. Hopefully, by the beginning of May, we'll be out of quarantine, but who knows? We may not be. I'm not, I by no means a somebody that studies viruses. So, but still, offering that opportunity could be, something unique to do this year. And so your playbook. So these are the 9 things that I know, just from having done this so many times and been out in so many communities, and, our capacity building program, it does emphasize on, giving days as, an opportunity as well. And so I know these things will ultimately lead to success if you do them or integrate into your existing framework. And one thing that I always love to start with is just a story that says, like, you can do it. Others like you are doing it as well. And I think nothing really embodies that better than Wiley Bulldogs Education Foundation. And Becky, who is the board president there, they are an all volunteer-led organization, so no full-time staff members, who provides many grants to local education providers. And so historically, they really, their giving day plan was to, send an email or two on the day itself, really not a whole lot of intentionality into it, a very limited communication plan. They weren't really drawing on the community to really help them in various fashions. But once they participated in our Jumpstart program, which is our capacity building program, we put together a more intentional program that focused on leveraging their community in different fashions, you know, and what we'll be going through here in a moment. But even with, you know, an all volunteer-led staff who hadn't really done a lot of intentional fundraising in the past, you know, they were able to turn what they had made historically at $5,000, you know, into $25,000 by following the plan that we're about to go through now. And so that's not to say that, you know, each one of you can expect to increase, you know, revenue by 500% by following these tips, but it is going to say, like, the more, if you follow this plan, you follow this playbook, you'll have a higher probability of raising more money because we know that this playbook works. And so what you want to be doing before the giving day. So first and foremost, and even in this type of environment, you know, it's really key that you work on securing a matching gift. This could come in going out to your existing board members, you know, and asking them to help, whether it be them personally making a gift towards the matching gift, or connecting with people in their friends, family, and coworker networks, to reaching out to, you know, some of your current major donors, maybe ones who are coming up, you know, going to be lapsed here pretty soon, and, you know, they haven't given within the last 12 months, or maybe even some of those folks, you know, sort of in that mid-level donor stage who haven't really given at what you consider to be a major gift level. And so before I go into a couple of other ideas and tips on this, I'm really curious, has anyone in prior years had a matching gift that they secured through their existing supporter network? And if so, you know, how did you do it? And, you know, did you find it to be helpful? And so either way, some folks, you know, chat into there. Got it. So it sounds like, just from the responses here, that not a lot of folks have really secured a matching gift. And if you've never done it, and why I have it here is like catnip, because it really is like the catnip of fundraising. I don't know what it is, but it is one of the biggest motivating factors to drive people to give. And so when you can have a 2-for-1 match, you know, or, you know, 1-for-3 match, you know, depending upon what you're trying to sort of, what outcomes you're trying to drive. So, like, for a good example, I work with a large group who are getting ready for the Colorado Gives. And so big part that we were advocating for them is to get a matching gift. And so because of the way Colorado Gives is structured, it's actually on Giving, it's 10 days after Giving Tuesday, which is kind of an odd place if you're a fundraiser and you're trying to figure out, okay, do I operate 2 giving days? Like, what do I do here? So part of what we were looking at is how to structure even that matching gift, so that, say, because they were able to make a commitment, you know, during the time from Giving Tuesday to the actual giving day itself. And so they were offering, you know, like a 3-for-1 matching gift opportunity on commitments. You know, the matching gift amount didn't change at all. It was just the way that they were presenting it to people that, you know, increased the motivation to make a commitment during that time, so that they are not missing out, you know, basically on the gifts that are being made in between Giving Tuesday and that giving day. So, you know, something to think about for yourself is, you know, one, how much should you secure? You know, so like, is a $1,000, you know, matching gift make sense, or do you want a $5,000 matching gift? And so part of it is looking at what you've raised historically during the giving day. You know, if you've only raised, you know, under $1,000, you may go out and look for a $1,000 matching gift. And it's always sort of the reality test, in the sense of, you know, do I think I have, you know, 5 people who can, or 4 people who can give $250? You know, can I get to that $1,000 amount? Or if you regularly raise, like what Becky was doing here during Abilene Gives, historically raising 5, the way she approached it is she went to one of their major donors, and who hadn't made a gift yet in the past 12 months, and asked him to make that first $5,000 commitment. And she was pretty genius in the way that she approached it. Is she went to another major donor and said, hey, Bill, that's a made-up name, he made a gift, if we run out of this or we, effectively meet this goal, are you willing to provide a second $5,000 matching gift? And so I was able to get that person to be signed up as well, kind of playing them against one another, which ultimately led to a $10,000 matching gift, which is a big part, the big driver of their ability to hit that $25,000 marker. And so again, it's all relative. I just know that if you secure a matching gift and you use that in your messaging on the giving day, you will get more donations than you would have without it. And also it gives you an opportunity to connect and build a relationship with that major donor as well, because depending upon their preference, it gives you an opportunity to thank them publicly and regularly, throughout the course of it as well. So there's really a lot of benefits involved here in securing a matching gift. And so before I go on to this next tip here, what I'm really curious too, when you hear me say, get a matching gift, what's the first thing that comes to mind? You're like, not my donors, my board members would get involved, or sounds like a great idea, just never really thought about it. Or is everybody already dialing for dollars? You just went ahead and called up your board members on a separate Zoom, and you've already started to talk through it with them. And that's a really important part too. If you, with your board, if you don't have an upcoming board meeting, go ahead and schedule one on Zoom. Or if you have an upcoming board meeting, don't cancel it, move everybody to Zoom, because this is something you want to start talking about now. Because if you're coming to the board and saying, we need to get a matching gift, because it's going to be really helpful, and particularly in times right now, we really need the support, and starting to work through them to better understand, like, can they make this commitment? Do they know friends that can make the commitment? How ultimately can you work with them to get them to sort of that, that goal, that matching gift goal that you have relative to what you have the capacity to raise? All right, so we'll go on to, that's a great point, James. A lot of times, a lot of local family foundations, just other foundations and DAFs may be open to providing matching gift funds as well. It's fairly regular. Yeah, Kim, that's a great question. So my donors are currently working on trying to save their business or daily salary due to the virus. Any ideas on approaching them? I would say lead with empathy. If anything, it's an opportunity and a touch point to have a conversation with them. I would imagine not every single one of your donors, is sort of in that particular situation. But having a conversation with them now, reaching out to see how they're doing, and again, leading with empathy. And so regardless of whether or not, they're able to make that matching gift now or even make a donation, they will remember you, when things start to get back to normal. But also it gives you an opportunity to understand, some of your donors who may not, be working on saving their business or, feel more financially secure, and also are in a position to help you during these times. So what I would say is, one, don't assume that everybody is going through, sort of these hardships. Reach out to them, be empathetic, better understand where they're at, and opportunities will come, whether it be now or in the future. That's a really great question. I would imagine one that's on everybody's mind. And so a big part of this, is mobilizing your advocates. And as I was mentioning, not only is this like a big push because of the opportunity, to engage folks. Yeah, that's a great point, Melissa, is that, everybody can, and this gets back into sort of what I was talking about earlier, it's about the $10 is like the minimum gift that somebody can make. And, people actually, there's a lot of benefits that come from making a donation to a nonprofit organization, especially when you are prepared to reinforce how valuable their commitment and contribution is to your organization. It's like literally a drug, basically the type of response that it can have in somebody's brain, particularly in times like this. And while it would be ridiculous for me to say that, sort of some folks just won't be able to give this year because, that's very likely. But it's also saying that a lot of folks still want to give and, want to help their community and, are willing to give what they can give. And so I think it puts the onus on you more so from the nonprofit perspective to make sure that you're ready to tell them about how awesome they are, why their impact matters, and why their gift matters. And so the big thing here, the tip 2, is to mobilize your advocates. And so this is one where a lot of folks struggle sometimes, not only to kind of activate people, to get people excited. I always say, like, for most small nonprofit organizations, whoever is responsible for fundraising never really got into nonprofits because they love fundraising. That wasn't they're not most times a professional fundraiser. They may have experience, it's something they've always done. And so when you think about the people that you're approaching, folks that are giving to your organization and support the work that you're doing, it's very likely they are not very good fundraisers as well. So something to take into account when you think about mobilizing them. So first things first, though, is to really think about who do you approach. And so, a big part of this is to still get out early, even in times like this. It's not to say that you have to figure out how to still be empathetic, but recognizing that that now there's a lot of people that are sitting at home, and so thinking about how can you play into that. And so I was talking to somebody this week. And so their organization helps individuals with Down syndrome in the Lincoln, Nebraska area, so actually just south of y'all. And they have all of these wonderful ideas of what they were anticipating was sort of they have a giving day themselves, one that's applicable to people with Down syndrome. And so they were planning on having all of these on-site events that were going to be occurring throughout the Lincoln community, throughout the month and leading up to this giving day. But now they're not. So they come up with all these brilliant ideas, basically, in order to engage people offline and maybe through Instagram or other means. But they're still sending this out. They're still communicating with people because people are kind of stuck in their homes and trying to figure out, what can I do? And so something to really think about is it's another opportunity. And I'll actually share all of those ideas with you afterwards that she had used that you may be able to kind of borrow yourself and use in your messaging. So, but to think about who to mobilize. So first, like who to target, that your board members, are a great place to start. Any of your volunteers, always a great place to start. If you have any recurring donors, great place to start. People who have been giving to you for multiple years, that's a good place to start. And really what I advocate for, or what I've seen really work the best, is to reach out to them now, and saying basically, here is what we're trying to accomplish, and of course messaging needs to can take into consideration, everything that's going on. But we're looking for people who can support our organization, and we're looking to see if you're interested, and if you're interested, how would you like to participate? And so this gives you a way, and this could just be a basic form that you use, and you ask a question. So, build your segment, put them into some sort of communication, and whether that's, an email or phone numbers, whatever the way that you communicate with these folks, and building a message around it, which you go back and you're actually asking people, what their preferences are. Are they tech averse? Like they love you or do everything for you, but they're very tech averse people. Or do you have a group who are like, we love it. We're down with creating fundraising pages and we're on Instagram all day long. Trying to figure out what type of support that these individuals are ultimately going to need in order to support your organization. Because I think that's a big part of it, is that a lot of times why people do not, or why nonprofits struggle to really activate people during these peer-to-peer fundraising campaigns, is that they don't do enough work up front, and they also don't do enough work to really help folks, overcome a lot of the barriers that they're going to have. It's also getting into like how to make it easy. So, mobilizing your advocates, one of the most effective tools that I've seen nonprofits use is, it works better when there's not a, when people can get out of their homes, but they do like pizza parties, where literally people can come, they'll help them set up their fundraising pages, and that's how they get all of their pages, set up. And so you could do something where it's like a Zoom happy hour, where you can invite everybody, and this may be just how you start, be like, hey guys, you are some of our greatest supporters and really appreciate all the work that you've done for us. it's a crazy time, and we're really interested to see how everybody can help us. Please join us at our Zoom happy hour or our Zoom lunch. We're going to be hosting 2 next week. We'd love to talk to you about some of the different opportunities or areas we can really use your support. And so everything could be asking them again, where do you need the help? Helping them set up their pages, to also just saying like, hey, we also realize that a lot of you may not have, maybe struggling. If you're an hourly worker and, you're getting laid off, but you still love the work that we're doing, would you be open just to sharing, with your groups on that day, on the giving day, with your friends, family, and coworker networks, and sort of getting them, sort of bucketizing people basically is what you're looking to do by asking these questions. And you can do that through forums, surveys, or just through a conversation on Zoom. But being very intentional with the support that you're providing folks to help them in getting set up and getting the resources they need. And so I'll pause there for a moment. I'm curious, what have you all done that you found to be helpful as it pertains to, looking to figure out who is this group, of folks that you want to try to mobilize? How have you approached like helping them, get set up, be informed, having clear expectations on how they can help, and then putting them sort of into these buckets so that you can be ready to help them based upon, where they think they can have the greatest impact. Has anybody done this with their board or anything? Okay. Biggest challenge. Yeah, and that's a great point, Craig. And so what I would suggest doing, you may just say, just send it to your entire list. If you don't have time, or you don't have the technology to be really selective, just send it out to everybody and just almost take it as like an open call, and say, hey guys, we're really looking for our community to step in and help us, as we get prepared for the upcoming Giving Day, which is now more important than ever that we come together as a community, to help us through this crisis. We can do it together. Either please complete this form, that'll give us an indication of where you think you can help, and that's where you ask them all those questions. And I'm happy to share an example afterwards. Or again, inviting them to the Zoom, type of conference calls where you can have a conversation with everybody is another way to do it as well. And so I just think a lot of people would be surprised, the folks that say yes. And again, it's a numbers game. You get 10 people, 3 to 4, will be really active. Great. So with board, helping them set up their cheer pages. Oh, got a little crazy there. Okay, great. So step 2 or tip 2, mobilizing your advocates. And so secure your narrative. So tip 3. The biggest opportunity for Giving Days, and the nonprofits that I've seen do this successfully, the way that they've done that is that they've done it through their supporters. The great example was Becky with Wiley Bulldogs. What she went out to is the teachers who received their grants, and had them all send them little short videos from their phones about the impact of the grant. I was on a call with another group in Sioux Falls, Dakota, or South Dakota recently, and they did a fantastic, and I'm actually going to share this email and form and follow up, where they went out and they did this over their year-end campaign, and they asked, both their donors, but also the program recipients, and these were like parents. They were an education program, an arts education program for at-risk youth, and asking the parents, and saying, what does this organization mean to you? And the response they got, they probably had like 60 people respond to the survey, which created all types of amazing content that now not only did they use their year-end campaign, they're able to double the amount that they raised, by using the voice of their supporters to tell the story of what's of the organization versus, like you as an individual who may not be the best writer in the world is trying to come up with an appeal letter, or to come up with multiple stories for the day. It's really a great opportunity to reach out and figure out how to tell the story of the potential of your mission, of the work that you're doing in the community through the voice of recipients and donors and board members. And so again, I'll share something in follow-up, The other thing too, when you're really thinking about, okay, secure the narrative, that's great. I can go out there, I can ask folks, to provide a bit of a story. What I would suggest looking at is if you can come up with 3 stories, from 3 different groups or even 3 of the same groups. And when I say groups, I mean volunteers, board, donors, etc. That's really what you need for the giving day. And so if you can say in the morning, the story is it's one story, middle of the day is another story, end of the day another story. And so the cadence that I've seen work really well too, in each of those is that you have maybe you start with, you have 3 different emails. So you have a total of 9 messages that go out throughout the day. In that it is a story, which is an indirect ask. It's like, here's a story about, so-and-so and why they love this organization. And then it's a direct ask, like, hey, we're so close, make sure to make a gift. And then 3, it is a thank you email or a thank you like social media post, where really what you're just doing is, a list of all the people who have given and thanking them, and is another indirect ask. So I'll pause there, just thinking about what you're doing to secure your narrative, to tell an authentic story through the voice of the people that you support and the people that love your organization. I'm curious, has anybody taken this approach prior? And if you did, was it successful? How did it go for you? Okay. And so I'm curious if you haven't taken this approach before, is there anything that's really stopping you from doing it? Something that I could help with? What I'll share and follow up is an email example of somebody who's done this, which includes a form as well that you can just copy, using any free form tool. But outside of showing an example, is there anything that I could do, or make sure that I follow up with, or, work with Melissa and her team to make sure that you have some resources to get this done? And you definitely have an audience right now, as everybody is sitting at home and can't go anywhere. Of course. Yeah, and that's Linda, that's a really good point too. So if you work with like a battered women's shelter or something like that, where sort of confidentiality is really essential, what we typically see folks do is, they make up a story effectively that's still true, or telling it, so as opposed to using the person's name, they use a fake name, which also, and they allude to the point that it's a fake name, and they use a sort of a fake photo or something like that, but it just reinforces, how the mission to a point, the fact that, like, we're not, whatever it may be, it's like, it just reinforces how important the work that you're doing is for your clients, and the type of situation and trouble that they're in. And so it's definitely, even if you don't have their stories, Linda, and you don't feel comfortable going out and asking, I think you can probably still tell, a general story that you can cap in sort of like, say like, Linda, here's the problem Linda had. There are so many Lindas in our community, help them out, or something to that effect. So there's a different way to approach it. But that's a frequent issue that I see folks run into, when confidentiality or clients is really a big deal, and but still wanted to tell their story because it's an important story to tell. That's great. We have some clients to share their story in a photo that we use as part of an annual campaign. Gail, that's awesome. And really one of the best things is, going back to the fact that a lot of folks at small nonprofit organizations are not fundraisers or not, sort of communication experts, sort of their forte may not always be writing. And so Craig, for you too, you may not have the time to write all of these fabulous stories, but this saves a lot of time on your part, having to craft the perfect message. And now you're just actually getting folks to help you tell that message. So it actually saves you time and energy at the end of the day as well. So it's a very efficient way to tell the story too. Great. So during the Give Big, so those are really the 3 things. I mean, there's a lot of other things that you could be doing during it. But I know that if you do those 3 things and you start now, start talking to your board members, start sending out, that invite, whether it's a form that everybody completes to indicate if they're interested, or inviting them to Zoom, conference calls to talk through it. You can come up with catchy names if you want, and it could also be, like, if you're doing a Zoom call, it can also be an opportunity. Who was I? I apologize. Kim earlier was mentioning, is just a mental health check with your supporters as well. They're probably looking for somebody to talk to and have a conversation. So it's going to be something that they're actually, interested in. And so while it's a conversation around what we can do for Give Big, it's also an opportunity, for them to, have somebody to talk to as they sit at home. So I think it could be really a win and an opportunity to look at some of these Zoom calls, to get the word out there and to start, create excitement and interest around the Giving Day. I think another important part that I didn't really mention is that setting clear expectations on what you want these advocates to do is really part of it. Identify who they are, send them an invite, ask them where they think they could help, and then setting clear expectations. So the expectation could be like on the Giving Day itself. The way that you're going to be successful is that you're going to share at least 3 times with your friends, family, and coworkers, and we're going to make that easy. And I'll talk about some steps for making it easy for folks as well. So that's a really clear part too, just setting expectations of folks on what they'll need to do in order to get set up, talking through. And there's some great resources that Melissa and her team has put together, and then I'll share afterwards as well, just on, what the fundraisers would need to do in order to get their pages set up. And also, again, you providing them with that support, in whatever fashion makes the most sense, holding sort of open office hours, or, whatever way that you can help folks get those pages up is a big support as well, in addition to the documents and instructions that are provided by the foundation. And so tip 4, more ask, more money. I think this is probably a Gen Y reference. I don't know if any of you all remember this song, but if you, we always look at what we call limiting belief monsters, the things that really hold people back from realizing their potential. And this is one of the limiting belief monsters, that folks see is, they don't want to spam people. They don't want to ask for money because they're not comfortable doing it. Going back to the fact they're not fundraisers, but it's the only way people give money. Going back to, as mentioning, I was on a call with a bunch of folks in Sioux Falls, and one of them just made the most obvious thing is nobody rarely shows up and just gives on your site. They have to be prompted to give by you or by somebody else, because giving is not something that people do habitually. It's not even really a routine per se. It's not, people don't wake up in the morning, and maybe they do so now because it's sort of, front of mind that, there's a crisis at hand, and, a lot of people who are reliant upon the social safety net to a point, in order to just sort of stay a lick above poverty, is crumbling. And so maybe more people are waking up, but I'd say in your more normal times, folks don't get up in the morning and say, hey, I want to help, cure the problem with, homelessness in my community, and then start, searching for organizations that are, in some capacity supporting the homeless population. That the way they typically end up finding out or getting interested in that is one of their friends, family, or coworkers, either has a conversation about an organization or supporter, and they get invited to an event. They hear about it at a Giving Day from somebody on their social media feed. That's typically the way people get involved in it. And so it's really just important that you ask people for money. And so going back to sort of that, what would you like to say, that cadence, throughout the day, you should anticipate incorporating a number of asks. And so whether that is, you can probably do it more frequently on social media if you wanted to. The cadence that I've seen to work the best, again, just to reinforce, and it's fairly, sort of simple to put together. The one is the story, from, one of your supporters or somebody that had provided their story, or a story that you sort of craft around a real but yet fictitious person, if there's a confidentiality issue. And then one that's more of a direct ask, and it can be fairly short, and just saying, hey guys, we're off to a fantastic start, or, hey, it's middle of the day and we're doing really well. We really appreciate it if you made a gift. And then the third one, just being a thank you. And it could literally just be a list of people who have made a donation to create social proof, for other folks on the list. and that will drive people to make a donation. So in each of them, always leaving a donate button, and you could replicate or repurpose all of that content for social media or any other channel that you're using. And so it's not like you're having to replicate all of this stuff. You just have to do it once, or I guess 3 times. And then you can repurpose it for the different channels, emails, and social media that you're sharing. And so I'm going to pause there too, because I'm really curious around, how many asks, throughout a day have you traditionally done? Is it 1, 5, 10? I hear often that people do it on the hour, every hour, sort of like power hours, on social media. Maybe they do it, twice. Some people, like, how Becky used to be, just would send out, 2 or 3 emails in a day with real no intentionality. I'm curious, how have you guys approached this? Do you typically, and also, is this an area where you struggle in the sense of, like, we're always concerned about asking for money? So it's just like a poll. I'm curious, do you ask, 1 to 3 times, more than 10 times if you pull everything together, or do you not recall? Okay. All right. Well, hopefully everybody has not fallen asleep. Craig, you've been an all-star. Thank you very much for your engagement. So last year I had 3 email series leading up to the big give, and then I think I had 3 emails going out during the day with some social media posts. That's great, Craig, for a guy who doesn't have a whole lot of time. That's, that's good. And you got it. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. It takes a little bit of time to type it out, so that's why I'm giving everybody a little bit of time here. Yeah, Suzanne, that's a good point too. As a small nonprofit organization, and it goes back to sort of the Becky story as well. An all volunteer-led organization, with limited time and capacity, can be successful in doing this, but it is, harder and dependent upon your programs right now too. And if you're sort of the chief everything officer, maybe it's taking a bit more time off your plate. But it's even that just reinforces how important it is for you to maybe send out that email asking for people to provide stories that you can incorporate into it, so you're not as reliant upon sort of you crafting the stories and getting everything out as well. And then Angie, you're good. If you're new to this, this will be maybe a little bit easier. You just need to follow the playbook here, and you'll be successful. And I'm curious too, before, has anybody already had the conversation with their board members about it, or is this really just thrown everything for a loop? This being sort of the pandemic and everything that's come with it. Got it. Linda, that's really good too. That's what I see regularly is we post on Facebook every hour, call and thank donors throughout the day, which is fantastic. There is a stat that I talk about fairly frequently, and it's that if you call a first-time donor within the first 48 hours, they're 400% more likely to make a gift, was one of the results of a recent study I'd read, which is pretty amazing. And that's a big part of it too. Part of what you want to start setting the expectation as on the board, is getting them prepared to, also be ready for cultivation, to make calls, throughout the day or even the day after, and helping to write cultivation emails or cultivation letters, or I apologize, acknowledgement letters. Great, thanks for sharing there. And so the other one here too is text messages. And so not so much in the sense of maybe you don't have sort of like a bulk text system, but it is a great way to connect with people and sort of break through a lot of what's going to be going on in the day. And so maybe you end up with sort of a group of advocates, let's say 10, 15 people, or maybe it's just your board. Maybe you put them into a group chat or a group text that you can then, send them out messages throughout the day, words of encouragement, maybe reminding them that, hey, we just posted on social, make sure to go share. And even like with going back to Becky, what they do, and this may be a little bit different because of the times, is that they have just board members, sitting down and just text messaging friends throughout the day. And so something that you can come up with, and, I can share some resources afterwards, just in some like little snippets that you can put in there is giving the board members or anybody that's sort of on your text messaging team or is interested in doing text, just something that they can type in that makes it really simple for them. So like taking the hardest part for folks is creating the copy. And so if you can provide them that copy, it takes a big barrier out of the way. Socially challenged, yeah. I guess this is an opportunity for some folks who are more introverts like Craig to kind of sit back and work from behind the computer as opposed to getting out in front of everybody. And so if you do have a system or if you do have access to something that allows you to send out mass text messages, it's an opportunity to really take advantage of that tool as well. Because it's one of the greatest ways to kind of break above the fold. And maybe like throughout the day, it may not even be a direct ask, but rather maybe you're sending them a link to one of your stories. It's like, hear about so-and-so and how they were inspired by this message. So you're really hitting them with a cultivation message as opposed to a direct ask, but that cultivation message will lead into an ask. Like you can actually share the link that is generated when you send an email, and you can share that in a text message as well. So again, getting back to the idea that you do not have to recreate, the wheel every time you pick a new channel, text message, social, or email. You can use the same exact thing and just sort of repurpose it all. And then really, this is the key one, is making it easy to love you. Going back to the point of, nobody's a natural fundraiser, and so they're not really accustomed to, they don't know what they're doing. And so that means they're also coming at it with really low motivation. I apologize. They just mean that they may be coming in with high motivation, but that motivation, can quickly be used up. And so because, when something is hard, sort of motivation is like a gas tank, it kind of, it goes away over time. And so one of the things that I have found to be the most helpful for motivating and for driving outcomes, engaging individuals, whether it be, folks who have created cheer pages, folks who may not have created a cheer page, but said like, hey, we're definitely open to sharing, the message throughout the day and helping you guys to raise more money. I just don't think, creating this page is going to be, something that I could do or what have you. It's just kind of trying to meet people where they're at. The cheer pages are really the best way to do this. But nonetheless, so like I was talking about basically there's 3 buckets of messages that go out in the day. In the morning, you have the story, the direct ask, and the thank you, and you do that again in the middle of the day, and you do that again towards the end of the day. And so what you want to follow that up with is, taking, forwarding the email and including the, so like one example for the emails, you forward that email to everybody on that list, that advocate list. So people that are creating fundraising pages, people that, have said like, we're ready to share the message, but basically people who have opted into being an advocate. And so basically you send them that email that you just send out to everybody and you forward it over to them and you just say, hey guys, here's an email that you all can forward to people and here's a message that you can use. So kind of typing up the template as well. And then if they have a cheer page, just say, here's where you add the link to your cheer page is one way to remind people. The other way is that, if you are sending out Facebook messages on the hour, what you could do is in that you could send a second email or include it in the same email that's going out to everyone that says, here are links to the Facebook post that we just recently put up. All you got to do is hit share. And here again is the copy that you'll use. And so, getting those messages prepared or being prepared to send out those messages, because one, people need to be reminded to do stuff, because they're either it's not going to go the way they planned, they're, getting busy throughout the day, they're what have you. The more that you remind somebody to do something, the more likely they are to do it. And especially if you've helped them sort of prepare for it, they're expecting these emails, like setting clear expectations. These are great ways for you to regularly throughout the day push more people to share the message and making it simple for them to do so that it increases the likelihood they'll do it. Another thing too is, again, going back to text messages, is, sending folks text, having that group text and just saying, hey guys, we just sent a couple of resources by email, make sure to check them out. let us know if you have any questions or anything like that. So like the text message is something that'll get in front of them. But nonetheless, it's going to take a lot of, I always say that really for the cheer group, for the advocates to be successful, like your number one role is the chief cheerleading officer. And if you're not regularly reminding and making it easy for folks to share your message throughout that day, it's very unlikely that they'll actually be able to do it, or it at least decreases the likelihood that more people do it. So maybe you have 10 people sign up, 2 kind of do it unabated, like with no help, with no motivation, with no prompts, with nothing else. They just kind of, they did it themselves. But if you're doing these types of tactics to engage and support and enable your community and making it easier for them to love you, more people will do it. So maybe you get, 5 out of 10 who sign up, or 6 out of 10 who sign up, or maybe all of them now, because you've made it easier for them to actually engage and support the organization. And so while I realize for, a lot of folks, this can be a good amount of work, I'm going to provide some resources afterwards that can be helpful. But it is really key to being successful in a giving day. And so I'm curious too, like, what are some of the things that you guys have done in the past to make it easy for some of your supporters to get engaged and involved in participating in, whether it's fundraising or sharing your message? Have you used any of the tactics I just talked about, or have you ever done anything differently, or have you not really done a whole lot, in the day? And I'll give it a minute or two of non-awkward silence while the folks can put some messages in the chat. Oh, right. So if somebody's typing right now, I'll go back and I'll make sure that we highlight those. And again, anything that's shared through here, we're also going to be pulling together as a resource that we'll follow up with as well. Yeah. Yeah, that's great, Angie. This is an opportunity to kind of start from scratch, and now having a playbook, as to what you can do, or where you want to focus your limited time and energy on successful giving day. And what I often see too is a result of folks kind of being more intentional with this giving day is that they're no longer doing another event. They had on the books that had been a revenue generating. This is actually taking the place of those events. Not only is it, if you really invest in this, it enables and supports and builds stronger connections with your communities, more so than just sort of a ticketed event can have. And it involves a little less planning as well. And so during the giving day, just to kind of go back and look like the big tips, more ask equals more money. Text messages, using those as a tool or in a channel to break through, sort of everything that's going on in a person's day, because people see text messages, there's an 86% read rate or something crazy like that. Just figuring out how to incorporate them into it, is really key. And something to think about, going forward too, is that if you don't have a lot of mobile numbers as just part of your, sort of a good data policy, is that you're looking to see how you can collect more mobile numbers from folks, just like you try to do emails or mailing addresses. And then just making it easy to love you. I think if you do anything, the big one is to know that you need to be sort of reminding folks, during the day and leading up to it. And so if you are forwarding, emails that you're sending out to everyone and prompting folks to share them, if you are, and these folks are the people that are expecting them, if you're sending out a number of Facebook posts throughout the day, sending those links to people, whether it be by email or by text message, just making sure that they're seeing those, is really key as well. And another tactic, I don't know if anybody has used these before, to get more visibility on social media, is, kind of going back to the idea of what I was talking about on your email cadence, where one of the emails that you're sending out of that 3-part cadence is just a pure thank you acknowledgement email, where it creates social proof. On Facebook, you can, again, replicate or repurpose that same type of style. But if you're tagging donors, it makes it much more likely that that will end up showing up in their in other people's newsfeed. Facebook makes it a little harder now to get the kind of awareness that you had in the past. But if you're tagging people in it, that's a good way to, to increase visibility of it. And so afterwards, like the biggest thing that you could do, if you're looking at how do I organize my time, in the sense of who should I call, what should I focus on, even throughout the course of the year, is that you want to focus on your new donors. I think today, the average new donor retention rate is like 22%, which is just absolutely insane, really. And so like and that's a big part of that is that, it depends on the source and where they're coming from. Giving Days, sometimes you may expect to have a lower retention rate on that group, just because, it was a friend, family, or coworker who asked them to make that donation. It wasn't always because of the mission, but more so, it was an opportunity that was missed by the nonprofit organization to educate them, to reinforce them, to give it up, to tell them why, this organization is important, and why you should continue to support this organization. So if you do have like a donor management system or, a way that you could very easily see, if somebody is a first-time donor to your organization, I would definitely spend your time on having your board member call this group, on having you call this group, on creating a unique experience during that first year. And maybe it's just like a 6-month, check-in with them and just say, and it could just be an email, in the past 6 months, here's all the amazing things that we've been able to do since you joined our community. And so just reinforcing and noting, that they are new, that the work that they're doing matters, and that they're having a really big impact. You could also come up with some sort of a welcome series, maybe a bit too much, depending upon the technology you have in place. But maybe what you do when you're making the call or, putting that group together in a segment and sending them an email to follow up to acknowledge them, maybe you include a bit more education or stories about the work that you're doing and the outcomes. Sort of why does this really matter that you made a donation today? Because they may not really know. Other ways to think about it too is, maybe prompting this group to talk to their friends about it, being like, don't let this be the end of the conversation around how we, support the homeless population in the Fremont community. Make sure you're talking to your friends, regularly about, what they're doing, what we're doing. But at the end of the day, being very intentional with how you retain this group will have the greatest impact on your long-term revenue. And so if you can get folks from 20%, average retention rate, and, I would highly suggest, if you haven't done it or don't know it, go in and look at what your first-year donor retention rates are, just at least so you have like a metric to look at and say, well, we're to try to get better than this. And yours may be higher, it may be lower. But if you can get, typically, if you can get somebody to give a second time, the likelihood that they'll make a third gift goes up exponentially. So it's like they go from a 20% to like a 40% possibility of retaining. And so if you can get more of those people to do that, that it greatly increases your long-term revenue, the total contributions of revenue, and what is ultimately unrestricted funds to your organization. And considering everything that's going on, it's really a great opportunity, long-term, to make sure that you guys are better equipped, when a situation like this occurs, because you have those unrestricted dollars, you have those relationships with folks who can step in and support the organization. I'm curious, does anybody take an intentional approach? Do you know what your first-time donor retention rate is? Do you know who first-time donors are? I'm curious if anybody has done anything differently. Or if you treat other people differently. Maybe you only follow up with your major donors because those are the folks that matter. Or what do you do? What do you focus on after the Giving Days with the folks that are new and giving through the Giving Days? I'm really surprised the dog didn't start barking now. Be one of the first calls I made it through. Yeah, that's great, Craig. Oh, that's great, Suzanne. Yeah, and that's really what is key. Is making sure you're thinking of them and try to make sure they understand who we are and what we do. That's great, Angie. Yeah. And one of the things, Angie, that you could ask your board members to do, and somebody was saying, Kim, I think you have a lot of introverted groups. So, maybe your board members aren't maybe the folks that are out there sort of screaming from the rooftop, sharing your social posts, because that's just not who they are. One of the things that you could, have that group do is, be prepared to write acknowledgement letters, handwritten acknowledgement letters. Or if you do have mobile numbers, a lot of times through these Giving Day platforms, they're collecting that mobile number. You can even send them, a quick video that you can record on your iPhone. If somebody, depending on how technical somebody is, you can send a quick video acknowledgement as well. So it's definitely an opportunity to engage some of your other board members, and trying to sort of leverage their strengths and interests to make sure that you're getting out letters. It's great. And Leah, I'm curious on when you just sent out a survey and the average response for first-time donors is around 25%. I'm just curious about the survey. What's the survey? Because if could be a fairly high response rate for 25% of folks, are completing a survey when they're the first-time donor. And are you just asking like, why did you make a gift, or? Oh, that's fantastic, Angie. And it goes into this next tip here. It takes on new meaning in our times here, but throwing a pizza party or two, and this could be just as well within the pre section as well. But it's an opportunity to thank and acknowledge folks, afterwards. And maybe you do now just like a happy hour or something like that afterwards. A big one that I've seen again is getting the board members together to write acknowledgement letters. There's just all different types of ways that you can approach this. I do often hear a lot of pushback on this, in the sense that, we don't want our donors to think that, we just gave them money and then they threw a pizza party, or, some variant of sort of that kind of pushback. And while I can appreciate that, I think it's also really important for one of two things. One, you can always ask for organizations to provide discounts or to provide in-kind gifts to offset some of the costs. You can always, when you're asking for that matching gift, ask maybe a board member, or ask somebody else to make sort of a dedicated or committed gift to the party here. But donor cultivation should not be overlooked, and really acknowledging the folks that were part of this is an investment, in not only the future, like your future Giving Days, but also just the future of your organization. It's creating stronger bonds with an individual. So if it costs $100, it's well worth it. Got it. That's helpful. And so I'm curious. And again, I know it is it's an interesting times with how things are going now. I know some of my friends from college, we never really thought about doing it, but now we're looking at doing like virtual happy hours on Zoom, just because it seems to be like the cool new thing to do. And Zoom is by far the winner of the coronavirus this year. But I'm curious, have you historically, thrown a type of party? I know you had mentioned earlier something about getting folks to show up during the day. Sometimes I see people do this during the day as well. But has this been a tactic that you've used, and has it gone well, or is it something that you thought about, but like I was saying, you just didn't feel really confident using the money? And I also see this too, like another thing that I see a lot of folks use, and like whether it's throwing a party or if it's like images throughout the day while you're, sitting at your computer working the Giving Day, those are opportunities for, very easy photos that then you could send out in, as acknowledgments. And so maybe you have, a group that gets together, and maybe, as opposed to like all being in person now, it's sort of a screenshot, like you have that Brady Bunch family version of Zoom where you could see everybody's photos. Maybe it's just a screenshot of that, and you send it out, through your various channels of just saying, thank you to all of our advocates and everybody who's involved. You can even tag them all in it, again, so that creates presence amongst their Facebook walls. It's likely that then they'll go and share that as well. So it becomes, viral in the context that, 5, 6, 10 people are sharing it. Yeah, and so I think one of the things too that makes it, and Craig is alluding to, I'm sorry if I keep, I know the chat is there everywhere that isn't calling on people throughout this. And so the follow-up, throughout the course of the year, and that's actually tip 9. And so we can kind of jump over to that. But, if you don't have the technology to be able to, one, see who's a first-time donor, or to be able to easily segment and target that group, at the end of the day, just regular donor communications, committing to sort of one, message a month, is kind of par, for what you should be doing. And it's always doing something is better than doing nothing. And so like just figuring out what that is. And again, too, I think where a lot of nonprofits get stuck when it comes to sort of the post-giving day communications, and keeping it up, is particularly like the idea that like newsletters need to be like this, 3-4 article with images and sort of, a lot of work effectively. I mean, you're not a newspaper editor, and so you may not have the time, and it may take you a full quarter before you can put together this, what amounts to sort of a mini newspaper. But it may not even be the most effective way to do it as far as like digital communications are concerned. What we're seeing is that the more images in an email, so if you're sending a newsletter, there's probably going to be multiple images, the less likely they are to actually make it into somebody's inboxes because it's too big of a file. And so spam filters are catching those. And then also when you give somebody too many choices, particularly when people are looking on mobile a lot of times, they don't actually take any action. And so your engagement rates could probably be better. What we see is a lot of folks are doing 2 things, and there's a lot of studies that are showing that a personal email, even going out to your full list that links to one story, is the most impactful message that you could send out, in the sense that, it gets the highest open rates because it gets to the most inboxes, and then it gets the most click-through rates because it gives people one specific option. So if you are in a situation where the reason why you don't regularly communicate with folks is that it takes you a quarter or, longer to put together sort of a bigger newsletter, I would switch to more consistent, regular communications with folks, sharing, one positive message or win that's happened, each month would have just as much of an impact, if not definitely more, than sharing it on a quarterly basis. And I'm just going to read up Linda's note here. No, that's great, Linda. And that's a big thing too. And so I thought I love with the photo, the dress up booth with hats and props, just making it fun. And so in figuring out how to do that in the virtual world, hopefully, again, we're not still on quarantine when it comes to May. But if we are, don't let that stop you from getting people together. Or maybe even if you do have an on-site where it is good to get people together, providing a virtual option, so more people can get involved would also be a great way to think about it too. And I think this gives an opportunity to kind of think, get familiar with doing things more virtually, because it does create a lot of additional copy or a lot of opportunities to share with folks. And so just getting into tip 9, the folks that are really the most successful, going back to the original person that we were talking about, and Becky, and how she was able to do all of these as an all volunteer-led organization with no staff members and definitely no professional fundraisers on their team, that, the second year that they went back to a giving day, they had a regular communication plan. You know, they were regularly reaching out to folks, you know, on a monthly basis. They were asking for money outside of year end, you know, providing people with other opportunities to engage in the organization, you know, whether that is attending their annual event, but continue to build on, you know, that success, to build those relationships, you know, to connect with the people who are new donors, to connect with people who are old and been around for a while, donors. But she was able to, again, increase the amount that she had raised from the prior year. And all of that had to do with the fact that, you know, the giving day was not the end. It was the starting line for the rest of their year. And continuing to build on that sense of community that you can really foster, and, you know, what is ultimately really important. And so whether it's getting folks to get engaged in cheer pages, whether it's, you know, just getting folks to, you know, be open to sharing your message, and whether it is just really getting yourself out there regular, doing more communicating and really using that, you know, telling that voice, or telling your story through their voice and getting them engaged and helping you tell that story. There's a lot of different ways that you can be engaging your community throughout the course of this this event. And really that's what it's all about, you know, and so the more that you could do to try to leverage the community to drive your communications, whether directly or indirectly, directly in the sense of helping you write it, you're sharing their story. Indirectly, they're helping you share that story amongst their friends, family, and coworkers. And so, you know, I know that if you guys do those, you know, 9 things, or if you incorporate those 9 things into your plan, and we'll just go through those again really quick. Probably should just have a summary. 1, catnip, secure a matching gift. Make sure that you're figuring out, you know, how to do this. And again, it's all relative. You know, $500 could be a very substantial matching gift. $100 can be a substantial matching gift. You know, $1,000. It's all dependent upon what you could do. Mobilizing your advocates, because this is a community-driven event. You know, that's why it's so critical that what you're doing is, you know, whether you're, you know, getting technical about it and, you know, targeting a specific group of people, or if you're just sending it out to the entire list as an invite and saying, hey guys, please join us, you know, or if you're interested in being an advocate, you know, here's how you can participate. And then, you know, setting proper expectations and providing support, you know, whether that's, you know, hosting a time where you'll help people get their pages set up, you'll help them set a goal, you'll walk them through the instructions of the group, you know, what have you. People need that additional help because they are not natural fundraisers. And so the idea is to go from, you know, say 10 people that, you know, say they're interested, but only 2 do it, but getting more of those people, you know, getting now 6 people because you have, you know, you've been a bit more helpful, you've helped them get their pages, so you've just kind of interacted more and provided more support leading up to it and trying to activate some more of those advocates. Securing the narrative, you know, this is really key and, you know, a great way to be more efficient, you know, and sort of allow you to focus on maybe your strengths, and that may just be delivering programs in a time of crisis. You know, there's definitely a lot of time, a lot of need for that. And, you know, leaning on some of your donors, your board members, your supporters to help you fill and tell the story in a very authentic way. And so during, you know, making sure that you're, you know, asking regularly. And so, you know, a lot of folks, you know, do it on Facebook. They'll do it maybe once an hour. I always, again, you know, advocate that you have 3 different groups, 3 different messages. You have a story that you've collected. You have a direct ask, which is sort of alluding to the campaign itself. Or not alluding, but, you know, speaking to the campaign and where you're at and what you're trying to accomplish. And then a third, which is focused on acknowledgments. And you could do those through social and text. Text messages, you know, making sure that you're taking advantage of this, whether it's in the sense of, you know, advocating that your board members or other people who sign on to be an advocate are taking advantage of the text message, you know, making it sure it's something that you're bringing up and talking about. You know, some people may never even think about it, but if you incorporate that into sort of your plan of saying like, hey guys, you know, how can you let's say one of the emails that we were talking about, you know, and make it easy is saying, okay guys, you know, it's noon, you know, here's an email that we just sent. You can send it to your friends, family, and coworker networks. You know, just go ahead and forward it. You can share, you know, one of these Facebook posts, or here's a quick snippet that you can throw into your text. And if somebody's on mobile, you know, they could very easily do that as well. So just something to think about. And then after the Give Big, you know, making sure that you're focusing on your new donors, you know, in addition to everybody. but really this is the opportunity to really have to build a strong and vibrant individual giving program. Is if you can increase the retention rate on first-time donors, the rest of it will really work its way out. Because if you're providing a relationship to this group that's leading to them increasing their contributions, it's very likely you're providing a great experience for the other donors. In which I was talking about in the beginning, which is now just more relevant than ever, because people are really looking for your messages as a tool to help them, really stress, to feel like it's going to be okay. Throw a party, and maybe a virtual one now. And then just realizing, this is the start. The Giving Day success, of next year is paved, the day after Giving Day. And so I'll pause there. I'm curious. I mean, we have a wealth of resources. I have a wealth of ideas, and I've been doing this for a while. I appreciate everybody, contributing here. Is there anything that I can do, or anything that you heard that I can potentially provide additional resources on while it's still fresh in your mind? And I'll let everybody type while I kind of work through this next challenge part of it. And so I know for many of you, you're thinking that, okay, well, Giving Day is done. It's time just to sort of kick back and be done with fundraising. The thing that you need to do but never really want to do, because again, that may be not why you joined a nonprofit organization. But one of the big, what would you like to say, emerging or successful approaches for year end is using Giving Tuesday as a tool to launch a spring campaign. And so what this doesn't mean is that you go back to everybody who's already given and continue to ask them for money, but rather it's an opportunity to go back and build on the momentum, the narrative, the story, the success, and saying, like, we have so many people who have given, respected to your organization. We've had all of these people participating, telling the story of your community, really reinforcing the success and the great community-driven benefits and stories that came from the Giving Day, and really targeting your lapsed donors or prospects. So if you have the capacity to do this or the technology to do this, you could send, let's say, another email or two, that's telling the story of the community-driven event and the success that you guys had, using a lot of social proof, to reinforce that a lot of people are doing this, and a lot of people are doing it because we have a fantastic mission that's having an impact, and really targeting that lapsed donor group, and even potentially prospect group as well. And so trying to reactivate as many of those individuals through this campaign. And I'm curious, so I'll stop there really quick, because I'm just interested to know if anybody has ever used, the Giving Day as a sort of springboard, so to speak, into, a lapsed donor campaign in the spring, or is it usually once the day's over, it's like, we send out our acknowledgement and we kind of go on to sort of business as usual? Got it. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a real missed opportunity for a lot of folks. And so the part of it too is, again, you're really not trying to craft like sort of this, crazy narrative, but it's almost like a wrap up sort of messaging that you're sending out to lapsed donors that's effectively saying, like, we had all these people, they were doing amazing things, we were able to raise this much money, to be able to do these amazing things in the community. We can still use your support. And that's a really terrible framing, so please don't jot that down in a note. But it's kind of the same idea. And then the idea is, too, that, if you run that full campaign and you run that lapsed donor campaign, it starts to become an opportunity to look at, cleaning up your data as well. And so a couple of different studies that have recently been coming out on the benefit of regularly cleaning up your data. A big one is particularly on emails. So with emails, the biggest thing is that a lot of times, once an email is on there, the only way they ever get off your email list is either they unsubscribe or the email gets bounced. And so many times on a many other lists, I'm kind of throwing a number out there, let's say 25% of your list is inactive for any number of reasons. They haven't opened up an email in over a year, and at this point, very likely, you just hit them with what? 15 emails, 15 different times to ask. And if they haven't still opened up an email or engaged in any of your content in over a year, that's probably an inactive group that you want to start looking at moving off your list. Maybe you first, as opposed to just moving them directly off your list, instead what you may do is, put that group into a segment that you'll then send them an email that's something to the effect of like, why did we lose that loving feeling? And, I've seen this been a really, really effective tactic at getting people to be engaged, to share with you why they haven't been opening up emails. And then if they don't respond to that message, it's time to move them off your list. And so how does that benefit you? Is one, the better your engagement metrics, the more likely you are to end up in inboxes. And so many times your 20% open rates and 1% click-through rates are actually much higher amongst active contacts. What you're looking at is amongst active and inactive contacts. And so just something to kind of think about, after you go through this round. And also looking at, your direct mail is not as relevant to, most giving days do tend to be a lot of digital fundraising, unless you have folks coming in and, dropping off checks, which may not be as easy to do here. But again, maybe an opportunity to get some of those folks that, have traditionally given by check to now give digitally, to get them to make it feel like it's not that scary. And that's maybe something you do when you reach them on Facebook, just because, or maybe even like during the day, you have a Zoom open or, some sort of way for a Facebook Live or some sort of like a resource that helps people that normally give by check actually give, through a donation page. And so it's an opportunity for you to help them. So if you normally give by check, but you can't make it out of the house, we're still manning the phones and we're happy to talk you through how to do it or something like that. But again, something for everybody to be doing is, regularly cleaning up your house list. But for your mailing list, I think something like, 12 to 15% of people move every year. So if you're not regularly updating the list as folks move, the list just becomes less relevant. So that's it. Really covered the 9 things that I've seen, successful giving programs do, or giving day programs do, to engage and to activate their community. Whether that's them becoming frontline fundraisers, them, sharing their stories with you so that then you can tell a very authentic story, to getting them just to share the message, to getting your board members to help find a matching gift. There's so many different opportunities to engage the community through these giving days. And really to build on that momentum and that sense of community, especially in times like now. Great, Craig. Thanks, James. So what I'll do in follow-up, I'll provide everybody with this. I'll provide everybody with the recording. And then I'll also include some additional resources that I had shared along the way. So like the example email, where somebody had sent this out to their list and asked them for to provide stories, that then they went around and used. They turned around and used for part of their narrative. I'll share, going back to that idea earlier with that group in Lincoln, Nebraska, who is now having to move what was going to be all on-site, fundraising activities to online. So I'll give you a couple of different ideas, and, by all means, feel free to reach out to me. If you have any questions or anything, I'm happy to do everything I can to do to help. But yeah, that's it. And Melissa, or, anybody else at the foundation, is there anything that you would like to make sure got covered, or, something that you don't think I brought up? If you just want to unmute yourself really quick, and I don't want to put you on the spot, you didn't really have anything.
Yes, thank you, Travis. I had to find my mute button. Yes.
Go right ahead, I can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes, I did just want to take one last moment. First of all, a big thank you to you. This has been wonderful information, great new ideas, and good ideas reinforcing some other messages that we have heard before and we have available on the portal. But I did want to just put a reminder out there again that our next training is the May 5th logistics. And so that's where we kind of walk through all the particulars of the that is going to be held on April 9th. And it was supposed to be in person. I'm confident it will be virtual like we did today, but we will send you information to get closer to that so that we can all dial in. And then, of course, our deadline to complete profiles or profile updates is April 17th. So those dates are around the corner. And as always, feel free to reach out to Lee, Amy, or I to help with whatever you need help with.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you for having me. Again, I really wish that we could have done this in person. Very disappointed. Better luck next year. We'll have to try this out again. Yeah, thank you. Thank you to you all. If there's anything else I can do, but yes, best of luck in quarantine. Mental health is really key in staying sane. So I pray for you. Please pray for me.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Have
you,
a great
Travis.
day.